I mean, I say this in the book about the English Defence League, and I've taken a lot of flack for years about this, but I refuse to say that Tommy Robinson is a Nazi. I refuse to say that he is a fascist. Now, I don't agree with him on everything, and I'm sure he wouldn't agree with me on everything. But it seems to me that if you've got somebody who just, as far as I know, has never said a racist thing, as far as I know, I've observed, is very, very comfortable and happy in, as it were, a multiracial Luton, but has a very big problem with the Islamic extremists who he saw on his streets and was talking about long before some other people were willing to, then, you know, it would have been, I can't tell you how easy it would have been for easier it would have been for my life and career if I'd have been willing to join in years ago and say, Tommy Robinson is a Nazi. I thought and think he is, as I say, I didn't agree with him on everything, he wouldn't agree with me on everything, but I think he's a working class guy who doesn't have a PhD and is worried about his country. You know, and I refuse to join in the demonization of everybody just because it's helpful in the short term. And I think it would be untrue, and it would be wrong, because I think these terms matter. Now, my belief is, by the way, that the people who've been overusing these terms will regret their overuse at some point, because they might need them again sometime. And when they do need them, no one will believe them. So my simple suggestion is, consider all of these things, consider all of the individual groups and the individuals, see what they say, and work out, as I say at one point in the book, work out what, if you are a non, as it were, PhD owning member of the public, how can you be worried about the things I'm talking about in my book, which are, by the way, all majority opinion worries. I mean, they are just every opinion poll. In remorseless detail, I show this. These are the things the general public in the majority are worried about. How can you express that worry without being a Nazi, fascist, racist? I think there are lots of people who are concerned about these things who are not Nazis, not racists, not fascists. And we will do a great disservice to our future if we, as I say, for short-term political gain, point the finger at everyone. There will be people, and there are people out there, who are genuine extremists, genuine far-right nutters, genuine fascists, neo-Nazis, absolutely. But I worry at the attempt to make opinions which are held by the majority into opinions which are claimed to be unacceptable, because a great variety of disasters could be ahead of us, but one of the most foreseeable is that one, where you basically make the opinion of the majority of the public into an illegal opinion.
Great. But censorship, yeah. So you talked about censorship, and I would like to know some general thoughts about, like, Tommy Robinson, since it's also applicable to your country, and I would like to know if you have some thoughts about that topic.
Let me tell you what I think is general. I wrote about this a few weeks ago, the National Review in America, but let me tell you what I think is actually going on. I think, and it goes back slightly to the gentleman's question there, I think that there is when you realize that you have got some very serious problems in your society, it's very hard to deal with the primary issue. What is easy to deal with is a secondary issue. So let me give you the example. For years, the thing that Tommy Robinson's been particularly vocal about, the grooming gangs, rape gangs, they're sometimes called Asian rape gangs, which itself is a problematic phrase, okay? These went on for years. We have report after report from the British government, the British authorities, admitting this is going on. Council workers who knew it was going on. Police who knew it was going on. All the local authorities who knew what was going on. All the local MPs who knew what was going on, okay? Every single part of society failed. Every single part. The police, the official reports all say the same thing, were worried about being politically incorrect. The council workers were worried they'd be accused of racism, and so on and so on and so forth. So you have by now, and I'm not exaggerating this is all of the stuff of the official findings, thousands and thousands of young girls from across the UK have been raped by these gangs. Now that's a bad thing to have on your conscience. That's the sort of thing that should keep any decent person awake at night if they had even a tiny role in allowing that to go on. But they don't address what allowed that to go on. We keep seeing this tendency to get the secondary problem. and go really hard for that. And the secondary problem always is the people who vocally, often wrongly, often crassly, all sorts of other things, identify in opposition to that. And they come down, they crack down on that as hard as anything. You saw, by the way, a very quick example of that. You saw that in Germany with Angela Merkel. When the Pegida protests began, I didn't agree with them. Like a lot of people, I was keeping an eye on what they were doing and so forth. What does Angela Merkel use her New Year message to do? To attack the Pegida. She says, these people in Pegida have coldness in their hearts. Okay, it's very easy to go for this. It's very easy to go for the people who are responding to it. Much harder is to go to the thing those people are trying to raise attention about. And, you know, in all of these cases, there are things that can be said that are critical and should be. But this seems to me to be the pattern we keep on seeing. And you see it here. My friend Mark Stein put it very beautifully in the Danish Parliament a few years ago when we were doing an event there. He said that the most famous Danish story is of the boy, you know, the boy who, the emperor's new clothes. And he was sort of, you know, Danish hero. Everyone liked to think they were the boy who, if they saw the emperor had no clothes, would say, look, the emperor's naked. And Mark pointed out that in modern Europe, the boy who noticed the emperor had no clothes would be a fool to mention it, and if he did, he'd probably be clubbed to death by the rest of the crowd. There's this weird tendency to shut down the very people who are pointing to it. You know, there's that old joke, the old saying that that the only thing you can't say in free speech is, you know, you can't shout fire in a crowded theatre. And I always say there is an exception to that, which is if there is a fire, okay? In which case it might be a quite wise idea. But every single time anyone says, look, I'm identifying this problem, everyone cracks down on them. And I just say the same thing always. How about you save some of the energy for shutting down all the people who you think are saying the wrong phrases and so on? Just expend a bit of that energy on the people who are preaching hatred in your society. You know, direct it at that, and the secondary thing will never come up, because you'll be dealing with it.
I've taken a lot of flack for many years that could have been avoided if I'd have been willing to say that I thought Tommy Robinson was a Nazi. And for my limited interaction with him, I don't think he is, I don't think he's a racist, and as I say, you pay a price just for not agreeing to call him the same names everyone calls him. But I don't think you should call people names that you don't think they are. So, old-fashioned idea though that is. I think it's a bit tricky because it's an ongoing case. I think having been warned not to harass people who were going into court in one case, I thought it was very unwise of him, to put it no stronger, to be on another courthouse steps. And yes, he is on the video confronting some of the accused. We take in Britain the issue of reporting restrictions, I can tell you as a journalist, very, very seriously. Like, I don't know that there's any country that takes it more seriously. I mean, it's nothing like America. I never write on any ongoing trial because you basically can't. You can report the basics, but I haven't done it myself ever, but I've seen journalists who have trodden accidentally over the reporting restrictions wire, and hell comes your way. Because you could be responsible, it is thought, for the jury absorbing information they shouldn't have had access to, and then you could cause the trial to collapse, and then you have basically that on your conscience as well as the fines on your wallet. So I thought he shouldn't have been doing that. That said, the swiftness of the process against him, the terrible advice, as far as I can see, that he was given by the lawyer he was handed, who told him what turned out to be not the case, which is that if he pleaded guilty, he would get off. I mean, it goes on and on. I think all of this is contested. I don't want to... There's one thing I have no doubt about in this, which is that, to some extent, at the quite senior level, Tommy Robinson's always been somebody who people have wanted to get.
that he causes trouble. And the truth is, it's also worth remembering in his EDL days he did. I mean, you know, like raising large groups of people is something I think is unwise anywhere, because you never know how the group is going to react, and there's a whole set of just unwise things to do. But, you know, he's not, like, he wasn't going to start writing opinion pieces in the Wall Street Journal or something. So, like, I give him some flack. Like, what do you want him to do? If you know, it goes back to my question I said earlier. If you didn't go to the right university and have the right CV, are you allowed to care about the future of your country? And I think he's made endless numbers of mistakes and so on. But I also think that there's been this out to get him thing from the start, which I'm just, I mean, the footage I saw of him recently looked broken, as far as I could see. I mean, it's very hard. I mean, I've had a couple of friends who've been in very different circumstances, been in solitary confinement, and it's very, very hard. Very, very hard. And I think he, from what I could see, has suffered very badly from that. I don't know how this story ends with him. I think that the outpouring of international concern about it is a good sign in some ways, because it reminds people not to make a scapegoat of him. But he's just been dealt the most terrible set of hands by an establishment who, as I think I mentioned here when I was speaking in 2015, have never treated any, you know, like radical imam with like a tenth of the dedication that they have poured onto the case of Tommy Robinson. You know, they find that he's got a mortgage anomaly, and, you know, he goes to prison on that, and, you know, and I've got to be very careful what I say about it. As I say, it's an ongoing case, but some people have done a real number on him, and I just think it's appalling.